Welcome everybody back to the Subliminal Show. Today I have Dr. Keith Kateski with me. So he's a professor over at Bethel University. He has been there, I think, 5-6 years at this point?
Seven. Yeah, 7
okay.
years.
Okay. My math skills, as you know, my math skills are not great at all. It takes a wild guess. And I'm like, yeah, that might be right. But he mentioned some of his things is he loves to be able to hike, camp, bike, kayaking, storm chasing, a lot of kind of outdoor activities, various things, just being outside in the nature, adventure, things along those lines. He mentions he might have a possible addiction to chocolate and an absolute immense love for coffee. But yeah, I am super thankful and excited to be able to sit down with good old Dr. Kateski here today, but we'll go ahead and get started. So, Dr. Kateski, is there anything that you want to add to your introduction of what you're passionate about?
No, not much to add other than my preference would be that you call me Keith.
Okay.
I'm grateful for the opportunity I had to finish the doctoral program, and all that I learned, it was certainly a valuable thing, but I'm still just Keith. So
all right, we can do that.
Just
So we'll go ahead and start with kind of this topic of storm chasing and outdoor activities, because storm chasing, at least as far as I know, is a fairly rare hobby. I'm not super exposed to that world and what that entails, but do you want to just, what kind of began your desire to storm chase?
Yeah, so it's kind of a rare hobby, not usually one that I share kind of up front with people because it often leads them to question my judgment. But I would say that it started really quite honestly back in 1974. There was a large tornado outbreak. It was in '74, on April the 3rd, 1974. I was just a little dude, about 7 years old or so, and it was something that forced myself, my family, and families all throughout our area where we lived to really spend a night in the basement of our house because there were tornadoes hitting all around. My dad, I can remember him posting on a map where all the different tornado touchdowns were, and it was all around us. And for me, it just sparked this intense curiosity, something like that was just fascinating to me. And it began an interest in weather. My very first speech that I gave as a 9-year-old kid was about forecasting the weather. I started tracking the outdoor temperatures, the high temperatures, and graphing them, and kind of just nerding out on some of that weather stuff in weird sorts of ways. But it prompted just this curiosity about tornadoes, and I've always been kind of interested in them. If a tornado, warning was issued, I was the one who was standing at the door, the window, kind of watching to see what I could see. And a number of years ago now, I was just hanging out with a new friend, and we're both kind of talking about this interest that we had in severe weather and tornadoes, that kind of thing. And we both kind of just looked at each other as we were kind of talking about, I'd love to be a storm chaser. I'd love to go chase these things, kind of thing. And finally, I think it was over a table, just eating wings together. It was just kind of like, let's do it. Let's just go, you know? And we really didn't have any kind of training, any kind of preparation. We did eventually go to the storm spotter training that the National Weather Service office in our area did, but of course they tell you not to chase, right?
Yes.
Stationary, you spot the storm, and we were trying to get all this kind of information that would help us in chasing. And then we just started going. We would just take a week of vacation in the month of May and just try to find our way. And over time, actually, we learned quite a bit, and he's learned even more than I have.
So this is probably a hobby that I might need to put in the a disclaimer of do not try this at home, sort of.
If you're worried about somebody suing you or me, we probably ought to do that. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Try this at home.
Yeah.
Done by experts, professionals.
That is true. Yeah. Or maybe just go visit your local weather, your National Weather Service, and go get certified.
Absolutely, and they would always love to have more certified storm spotters. That really does help them in a significant way.
Hey, the more you know. I did not know that. That's pretty exciting.
There have been some tense moments at times, I think, when kind of things get a little on the crazy side. I can remember being in Oklahoma one time, kind of under the mesocyclone on a storm, as a tornado was kind of forming overhead, and we were not as wisely positioned as we became later on in
Ah,
our storm chasing
yeah.
work, and so we had to jump in the car and drive away really fast. And I just remember changing of the wind direction from inflow to outflow, and the wind being so strong at the time that I couldn't even pull the car door shut. I was like literally just holding onto the door as we drove away because I couldn't get it was
Whoa.
like a sail in
No.
that wind. So it probably sounds worse than it actually
Yeah.
was.
Hmm.
But you talk about something that kind of gets
Yeah,
the
like,
adrenaline going.
hmm,
Would be that would be one of them.
yeah.
I tend to get kind of nervous and tense in when darkness falls, like when it gets
Okay.
dark.
Yeah.
I'm not super excited about chasing in the dark. Part of it is that when I chase, I love to be able to see. I'm
Hmm.
chasing so I can see what's there, and
Yeah,
in the
exactly.
dark, often all you can see is silhouettes against the lightning behind it or something like
Mm.
that. But some of the craziness comes too with just the traffic. There are a lot of people
Mm.
actually crazy, a lot of people that actually chase tornadoes, and so on a
Okay.
good chase day, it would not be unusual to have 100 chasers and the roads get
Really?
clogged, and
Okay.
you've got
Yeah.
people who are watching the sky instead of the
Hmm.
road. And so I've often told my wife, in fact, that my greatest fear storm chasing is not so much the storm, but the traffic.
Ah.
Like, afraid that my car's going to get hit by some chaser who's
Yeah, just like,
driving erratically, trying to watch the
yeah.
horizon or something. It doesn't see our car or something like that. But a far greater danger, as far as I'm concerned, my own experiences.
Okay. Yeah, so it seems that kind of seems to be the common theme of it's an adventure, but also a little bit of an adrenaline rush as well, and it kind of just feeds into just a general excitement to want to go do these sort of things. So does that kind of feed into your love to the outdoors as well?
I suppose there's an element, yeah, of the adventure that's involved there. I think the outdoors for me, the love of the outdoors, one is just being active. I
Hmm.
think both my wife and I, we just love being active. We don't want to be couch potatoes. We don't
Yeah.
want to be people who sit around. I love being up and doing things, and the
Hmm.
outdoors provides a great setting, a
Yeah.
context in which we can active, and particularly as we've come into this season of our life, we're empty nesters now,
Mm.
and what had been for many years, our life kind of revolved around activities that our children were involved in and that kind of thing, and then suddenly kind of was the two of us, right? And it was kind of like, well,
Yeah.
let's find things that we enjoy doing together. We both kind of had things that we liked to do. Like, she has absolutely no interest in storm chasing with me.
Yeah.
She makes that abundantly clear, that kind of
Yeah.
thing. And there are some things she does that, like, I'm not really interested in
Hmm.
either.
Hmm.
I would do it for her, but it's not really something I love. But
Yeah.
we found some things that we loved in the outdoors. So we've taken up biking and kayaking and hiking. We've always loved hiking. That's been a part of our life. And so, part of it is just the activity. We love being active. And then part of it is just a love for creation.
Mm. Yeah.
For me, there's just something about being in God's wonderful creation. There's I don't, and I don't know that I can find all of the words to quite describe
Yeah.
what that is, but there's just something about hiking in the woods. There's something about being in the mountains.
Hmm.
Earlier this summer, we were out in western Montana at Glacier National Park, and there's just a gorgeous majesty,
Yeah.
to what's there, and the chance to hike in that and see that. And for me, one of the things I do enjoy doing, a little bit of amateur photography, and so
Hmm.
that often blends nicely with being in the outdoors. But we
Yeah.
we love the outdoors. We just came back, from a few days camping
Hmm.
in the woods, and just loved it, and then it was kind of like, oh, now I have to go back to work.
Yeah,
Wish
yeah,
I could
yeah. Yeah, so it's just a pleasure from being outside, and really that just being in that creation, that space really kind of energizes and motivates you to just feel better about life, I guess. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. And then there's like a peace, like there's an escape
Mm.
from the stresses of my work and that
Yeah.
kind of thing. And we even talked about that this weekend. We planned to go camping just the
Mhm.
last few days. Anyway, but like last week, there came a point where there were just some things that happened in my job that
Mm.
provided kind of extra stress. And I'd even commented, to my wife, like, man, I'm starting to feel that. In fact, there was kind of a point, like in one evening last week, it had been a particularly stressful day, some things that were kind of weighing heavily on me, and it was just
Mhm.
a late evening, and I'm just like, I need to just take a walk, right?
Yeah.
I need to get outside, right?
Mhm.
And I walked through, our campus where I teach is beautiful with big trees and ponds and kind of thing. And I just walked in, it's not quite the Rocky Mountains or something like that, but it's a
Yeah.
beautiful outdoor kind of place,
Hmm.
and there's just kind of a calmness, a peace of heart
Yeah.
that comes with that. And then being away, then camping this weekend,
Hmm.
it's just like that stress just is
Yeah.
set aside, and I find a peace that comes with just being in the
Hmm.
quietness of nature. And when we go in the outdoors, we're not bringing along the speakers with
Yeah.
the latest playlists and all that. We
Hmm.
don't want the
Hmm.
music. I get frustrated with, because there were some people camping who were playing their music,
Yeah.
at points, and I'm just like, man, like you don't come out here like for that. Like this is what I come out here to hear the
Yeah.
cicadas,
Yeah.
singing, and the birds and that kind of thing. There's just something about the true natural
Hmm.
beauty of
Yeah.
creation that just brings a calmness of heart and a peace for me that
Mm.
helps in a time like that. It's a stress reliever for me. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And as a little like mental health moment here, like there are several studies that have shown that just being outside, even those simple times like you mentioned, just a quick walk, is very exponential in like lowering depression and anxiety because you're in that space and you're able to just you're able to like center yourself in like the place that you're at, because yeah, like you said, you hear the cicadas, you hear the crickets, you hear your feet walking on the ground, and when you hear those things and you're able to center yourself and you're just like, I'm here in this moment, I'm not worrying about the future, I'm not stressed about the past, I can just be here. And so yeah, it seems like your experience is very accurate of that, of just allowing you that space of serenity and like a healing space almost.
So true. No question about it. And the s'mores around the campfire also help. The chocolate
Yes,
from
of
that. But
course.
yeah, I
Yes.
think I have one memory. A number of years ago, we
Hmm.
took a vacation with our kids were younger at the time, and we went out to Grand Canyon
Hmm.
and saw the big hole in the ground. That beautiful, majestic. And my wife had found some information about a place where that isn't like advertised as an overlook and that kind of thing. But they do like some events there or whatever. But
Hmm.
it's like a nondescript parking area, that kind of thing. And in a national park like the Grand Canyon, there are people everywhere, crowds of people, throngs of people, which is frustrating to me because I go out to nature, right? I want to be
Yeah.
ourselves. I
Hmm.
want the quiet. I want to hear the cicadas and whatever, or even just the silence, right,
Hmm.
of that. And so we found this nondescript little parking lot, no sign indicating what it is. Path goes back through the woods. We walk. I don't know how far now. I can't remember what it was. But we passed a couple of people who were walking back. When we got to this point out over the Grand Canyon, nobody was there. Like it was
Wow.
just the four of us and our family.
Yeah.
And there was this quietness, there was this serenity,
Hmm.
this peace, in the midst of the vastness and the majesty of this. And oh man, one of my favorite memories of being in creation. But it was that element of just
Yeah.
serenity and quiet and that kind of thing. We sat there for a long time, and then
Yeah.
finally, as we were leaving, somebody else was coming, but like so different from
Hmm.
the major overlooks and
Yeah.
stuff. Farther down the canyon where you've got crowds of people and
Hmm.
moms yelling at their kids or dads yelling at their kids, or
Stay
being
away from
grumpy
the
and all that.
edge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
don't fall. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you fall, I'll cut your leg off. Or whatever.
Yeah.
But like it was just that element of serenity,
Yeah.
this beauty. It was amazing.
Hmm.
It was just one of my favorite memories of that kind of thing. But yeah, just there's a peace of being in creation that
Yeah.
I experience regularly, and I love that. It certainly was helpful this weekend in dealing with the stress and anxiety that I was feeling from stuff
Yeah.
last week. So it was good.
Those moments are really centering, and you're just like, wow, like we exist in such a beautiful space around us, and I feel like too often we miss out on it.
I'm pretty rigid in following a weekly rhythm of
Yeah.
6 days of work and then a day of rest on the seventh. And now that I'm a college professor and not a pastor, Sunday is once again like my
Yeah.
Sabbath.
Yeah.
And so often, you'll see my wife and I hiking or biking or kayaking on the Sabbath,
Hmm.
and I'll even sometimes post on social media, hashtag Sabbath hike,
Yeah.
or hashtag Sabbath paddling or something like that. And my students have even picked up on that at times, and they're like, "Oh, well,
Yeah.
what will you be doing this Sat?" Right? Because those are
Yeah.
things that replenish, and refresh
Yeah.
and restore. And
Mm-hmm.
in classes, in some of the classes that I teach, we talk about finding those things for Sabbath, those things that we embrace, not just that we
Yeah.
stop work or we cease, those things that
Yeah.
bring anxiety and stuff in our life, but that we actually embrace those things, we engage in those things, restore and refresh. And for me, those hobbies tend to be things that bring me restoration, not
Yeah.
that drain me, kind of like work tends to do. Even work that I love
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
tiresome at points and has obligations attached to it. And these
Mm-hmm.
hobbies are much more a release from that sense of obligation, and something that I do for the sheer joy of doing it, not because I have to
Yeah.
produce something.
Yeah. And I definitely think there is, like you mentioned, something fun and keeps that space sacred. But at this point, we're going to kind of switch our topic to kind of what your profession has been at this point. So you're going to have to correct me if I'm wrong, but your doctoral degree focused on this idea of mentorship and discipleship. And so would you be willing to kind of speak in a little bit about that, of just like what kind of drew you into that area and that pursuit of research and all
Yeah,
that stuff?
absolutely. I'd love to. I could talk all day about that. I think you wouldn't want that. Okay, but yeah, my doctoral dissertation was on mentoring, and particularly mentoring in the context of the early years of Christian ministry, pastoral
Okay.
ministry, by some of the graduates of our program. And that's partly because our project for our doctoral dissertation had to be something out of our ministry context. For me,
Okay.
that
Yeah.
was graduates of our program in Christian Men. But it really evolved out of my interest in seeing the significant influence of mentoring in my own life.
Okay.
Kind of one of the things, as we were choosing a dissertation topic, one of the things that we were told to do, was just think back on what are those things that are you passionate about, or where you've seen significant influence. And I'm interested in that for my students, but I also recognized kind of in my own life, in my own vocation as a minister, a pastor, there were three or four kind of key mentors who kind of took me under their wing, who modeled for me ministry, who shared from their life, who answered my questions, who listened at times to me in asking some of those hard questions. And their influence in my life was undeniable. I mean, just absolutely significant in powerful ways. And
then just for those who may not fully understand, but how would you describe or answer the question, like, what is a mentor?
yeah, so traditionally, a mentor is kind of that person who's a bit older than you. They've experienced more of life, and they kind of come alongside,
Yeah.
and then kind of pass along that knowledge in a learning relationship, right? In a deep quality kind of friendship relationship. Its roots are in even the Odyssey.
Okay.
The ancient work of literature, where the character mentor is the person that Odysseus leaves his son in the care
Okay.
of while he
Yeah.
goes off on his adventure that Odyssey kind of sees there. And so, mentors are those kind of people who are farther down the road than us, who come alongside us, and in the context of relationship, guide us. A mentor is kind of a guide, right? They're the wise sage who guides us into those next seasons of life, and kind of a developmental kind of relationship. It's more than just education, although it involves certainly a learning component. But
Yeah.
but kind of some of the earliest research on mentoring actually came out of the developmental psychology literature, and the field of research there, where they saw the powerful influence of this, particularly with young adults, adolescents moving into young adulthood, and the importance of having kind of this wiser, more experienced person, adult who comes alongside and helps you as you develop into those further stages of life. So that's kind of in a nutshell. I mean, there are lots of definitions of that, and there's certainly elements of mentoring that involve a mutuality. Kind of the traditional concept of mentoring sometimes makes it sound like a bit of a one-way kind of thing, right? The wise sage, the teacher, kind of informs the younger student, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And certainly in a relationship, that's one of the great purposes of that. But those of us who mentor others now that I'm older, now that I'm not the young, the young buck who's kind of starting out in life, but now that I'm mentoring others, you recognize that there's a mutuality to that though as well.
Yeah.
That there's a learning role that the mentor plays even in a relationship like that. That is a joy as well.
Yeah.
other than one of the interesting kind of newer concepts in mentoring research is the idea of a set of those developmental relationships or mentoring relationships, and the value actually of having not just a singular mentor, but actually multiple mentors at maybe different seasons of life. There is some interesting stuff starting to be done about kind of this group, kind of a mentoring group, a mentoring team, almost a set of mentoring relationships that's worthy of consideration. Learning not just from, and learning from people in different generations, right? Learning from those who are, a couple of generational cohorts, older than me, and one just older than me, and then myself, and then having an opportunity maybe to mentor one in a generation kind of behind me gives richness to our experience and to our learning. And I think that's valuable. One aspect of my research involved kind of that developmental or the generational kind of component. And then differences in the ways that different generational cohorts tend to view mentors, and the Gen Z and millennials and my Gen X generation and that kind of thing. Some interesting differences in how they approach some of those things.
But do you have any tips on like how to make a mentor relationship work?
Yeah, I could offer some. Again, it's research based. I mean, it comes out of not just my research, but even some of the research of others. I think one of the tips, certainly one of the things that came out of my research, certainly was the value that mentees, the ones being mentored, based on the availability of the mentor. Like if one wants to be a really good mentor, being available to your mentee pretty much at all times. And what I discovered in listening to some of these mentees talk was they don't expect the mentor to meet with them in person on the spot any time of the day or night. But there were times when they encountered situations, and again, some of the people I was talking to are in ministry, and there are things that happen, late at night, at 11 o'clock at night, you're called out to a pastoral care issue, somebody in your home, and like they're like, I'm running into something here that's more difficult than I've ever encountered before, and I didn't so much expect my mentor to sit down and meet with me in person, like at that moment. But it was great to be able to text them and say, hey, I'm encountering this, and to have them respond, even, in a couple of texts, and then say, let's connect tomorrow afternoon or whatever and talk about this. That availability thing was a really big deal. But what they really valued by a mentor was the opportunity to kind of spark their awareness of other perspectives, right? To be able to see their circumstance from a slightly different perspective, or to think of something about that they hadn't thought of before. And most often for them, it wasn't because the mentor said, well, let me tell you how to fix your problem. It was that the mentor said, well, have you thought about, then they ask a question, a really astute, thoughtful, insightful question. And the mentee goes, oh, I never considered the possibility that person was motivated by this, feeling rather than what I thought they were, and so the people I talked with in my research often talked about the value of that listening and asking of questions in the mentoring conversations that take place. And there's a lot in the literature about mentoring conversations and how those work, and it's anchored, in adult learning theory and that kind of thing. You step back from your experience and you reflect on that, and then you strategize and that kind of thing. But that listening and then asking of questions was like a key mentoring practice that was clear for them was really valued, and they valued the advice that one might give as well, but it was clear that the conversation that caused them to think, and that really treated it right as a more developmental thing. So I'm not just giving them the answer to fix their problem, but I'm developing their capacity, right, to find the answers for themselves to address their problems in the future. And I'm not just fixing it for them or telling them how to fix it, but I'm developing their capacity to do that for themselves without the need of a mentor in the future. And that was something that they really valued, and I think that mentors saw as a priority for them as well. That this isn't just an advice situation, but I'm actually wanting to develop their potential.
Well, is there anything else that you'd want to offer as a closing note or last?
I don't think so. Just I don't know that I would have anything to add to that other than appreciate the opportunity certainly to share from my heart, to share some of what I've done more vocationally, but some of what I've done just for fun as well, and just would encourage people to find those elements in their life that bring them joy and embrace those on a regular basis for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's 100% true. Being able to find those spaces, and that's been a fairly consistent conversation that we've had here in the show, of finding those spaces where you feel re-energized. You're able to have that place to recharge so you can continue moving on, of whether you're working a job that is something you love to do or something that's just a job to get by. No matter what you do, it's still meaningful, and it is serving a purpose. And you are making meaning of that experience. In a very long-winded way to say that. But yeah, I want to thank Keith again for coming on and being willing to do this. But yeah, you guys know where to find us. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. We now have a merch store. We have a brand new website, and Keith gets to debut it on his episode. It's just subliminalshow.com. Yeah, super fancy. All right, well, we will see you guys next week.